Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we started recording episodes virtually instead of being in the same room together. This created technical issues for us for many weeks. Our sound issues get better beginning with the pros and cons episode. In the meantime, we appreciate your patience with the sound issues that are present in this episode. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hi, guys! We're glad you're here with us. Did you hear Kate? I hope you heard Kate.
Everyone can hear me, right?
I know, I hope so. We mentioned this last episode, but Kate is here with me via Zoom, basically, is how we're doing this episode the same way that we did last week's. What'd you say?
We've gone digital, man.
We've gone totally digital. We don't need any of this boring in-person stuff. No, I'm kidding. I really miss the in-person stuff, but, you know, as we mentioned last episode, this is what we've got to do for the time being because of sheltering in place and reducing the spread of COVID-19 in the world. So I have Kate via Zoom, like I said, and that's how we're going to be doing this episode today, just like last time. So yeah, what we're getting into with today's episode is another DBT acronym, and this acronym is ABC. It's not an actual word like DBT tries so often to achieve. It's just ABC. And I'm going to briefly talk about what they each stand for, but then obviously we're going to be getting more in depth on each one as we go through the episode. But the A stands for accumulating positive emotions. The B stands for build mastery. And the C stands for cope ahead of time. So these are all three very distinct things that are each, I would argue, pretty difficult and challenging on their own to take on. Like, they're all really big. And DBT...
Yeah, they're big sort of life changes in some sort.
Yeah, they really are. And DBT mashes them all together into this one acronym, which I think can be a little misleading, especially because it's ABC. We're like, oh, that's easy. No, these are all pretty big things. And the way that Kay and I think about this in terms of like, so what's the purpose of this ABC skill? If we look at it as a whole.
These three things together.
Yes, exactly. Why are each of these things that could really, we think, stand on their own as being three very different skills? Why do they put them in an acronym together? What's the reason for that? And basically the main thing that we think of for why that is because if we think about our emotional reserves as like a gas tank, there are going to be things that come along in life that throw us a curveball, that catch us off guard, that we're not expecting. I mean, hello, COVID-19, as one example. There's just going to be these things that happen sometimes that are outside of our control, and they can take a big emotional toll on us. They can really run us down. They can really take our energy, take our resources away. We can take a pretty big hit in terms of our well-being when something major happens in life. And so it can drain the gas tank, if you think of it like that. And basically what these three things do as a collective when we're practicing them is they help keep our gas tank full. They can re-energize us if we're doing them on a regular basis. They're going to keep our gas tank full enough so that when those big things happen in life that can be really challenging to cope with come along, our gas tank will still take a hit, but it might not take as big of a hit because maybe
it may not put us in the negative.
Yeah, it won't put us in the negative. You know, maybe it's one of those things where, like, I don't know, if you're doing these things regularly, maybe your gas tank hovers around like 85 or 90% full. Great. So then a big thing comes along, you may drop down to like 30%, But that's a whole lot better than if, let's say, you were at like 50% before the bad thing came, and then it takes you down to like 10%. So the higher your gas tank is emotionally to begin with, so to speak, the better you're going to be able to weather these storms that come along. And these are all things that, when taken together, can help you weather the storms that come along in life. I feel like I'm getting really cheesy all of a sudden.
Metaphors are us.
I love metaphors. It's how I get through life, is talking in metaphors.
Oh, I know, me too.
Hopefully it's making sense to all of you listening out there. But yeah, so we're going to break down, I mean, it's ABC. We're going to, of course, go with the A first. So I'm going to turn that over to you, Kate, to get us started with what are some things we can do for accumulating positive emotions?
Well, I don't know. It's a similar kind of idea to your fuel tank, I guess, but another analogy I use is like the idea of a scale. And I think we all know by now, life, without any intervention from us, will do a fine job of putting difficult, unpleasant, shitty things on one side of the scale, right? We don't have to help it. That's just gonna happen, right? That's a given. Bad stuff happens, right? That's just true. So what can we do to try and keep those scales balanced, right? And I think that's the vision that I use for thinking of accumulating positive emotions. We're gonna accumulate, quote unquote, negative emotions. I hate that word. Without any interference, without any effort.
Bad things are gonna happen.
But how to help balance that out? So one of the things I think about is both consciously and intentionally engaging in pleasant experiences, positive events, stuff we enjoy, but also tuning in to the pleasant experiences that are already a part of our day-to-day life. So Michelle's going to talk about sort of bigger things and longer term things in a few minutes, but I really like to point out that in every day, there are tiny joys, right? There are small things to bring us pleasure, to make us happy, to make us smile, that are available all over the place, right? Some of these we can just consciously choose. Do you know you like reading? Make some bloody time to read in your day, right? Like, do that intentionally, right? Do you enjoy listening to music? Listen to music, right? Like, you already know some things that help put a smile on your face, help you feel energized, help you, bring you pleasure, mental, emotional, or physical pleasure. So do the things, right? Don't have those be the lowest priority. So often we are so focused on the things we have to do, and we lump all these positive things into stuff we want to do. I would really like people to recategorize. I think engaging in things that bring us joy needs to go on the need to do list. Like, you matter, and you're going to be able to tackle all those other need to do's with so much more, equilibrium and or vigor if you're intentionally doing things that make you happy. So that's one thing. Make time, even if it's a little bit of time. Take 5 minutes. Do a thing that makes you happy, right? So that's kind of one thing that I think about. The other idea is pay attention, right? That first, sip of tea or coffee in the morning, and close your eyes and savor it, right? Pay attention, be present. To go back, I don't even know how many episodes now, right? Be mindful of the pleasures that are already there, right? If you step outside and it's a beautiful spring day and there's the warmth of the sun on your face and the smell of the spring flowers, like, I was going to say not to be cliche, but really intentionally cliche. Stop and smell the fucking roses, right? Like, pay attention to the joys that are already there, right? The hug from your child or spouse, or cuddles from your pet, or, actually enjoy that funny meme that you see, like actually take a second to laugh, right? There are more positive things going on in your day than you notice, I can pretty much guarantee. So both consciously and intentionally engage in small things that can bring you happiness, and pay attention to the things that are already there. And I think that's both of those are things that a lot of us aren't doing enough of. And no, I fall into the trap of not engaging in my pleasant things because I'm like, well, but I have to pay the bills, and I have to clean the house, and I have to do yard work, and I have to, right? And then I get to the end of the day, I'm like, well, balls. I didn't do anything, that was intentionally positive. But even on those days, right, there's a pleasure in seeing your kitchen swept. There's a sense of accomplishment in having paid your bills, right? Maybe you got to enjoy the sunshine in your yard work, right? So, I don't know. Does that make sense, Michelle, that balance of both intentionally doing things and paying attention to the shit what's already there?
I think it totally makes sense. And I fall into that all the time of my to-do list comes first. And then if I'm lucky, I have time at the end of the day to do what I want to do. I've, throughout my life, been a big person who prioritizes work over play. And that's a big thing I've talked about over the course of my own therapy is, why that is and how can I change that and what that's going to look like for me to do differently. And as you were talking about all this, I just thought of some recent examples for me. Like I was taking out, it was over a week ago now. But I was, which is funny because I mentioned this briefly last episode and now I'm mentioning it again. As part of my nighttime routine, I scoop my cat's litter box. And I was taking out my cat's poop and putting it in our big garbage bin outside. And I looked up and the moon, it was one of the nights where the moon was really full. It was beautiful, like the clouds are passing in front of it in a really cool way. And I just paused. I literally probably only paused for like 3 seconds. Like it was, and a lot of what I think we're talking about goes back to the stuff we've talked about with mindfulness. Because if I hadn't been being mindful in that moment, I wouldn't have noticed, which would be my typical thing is to just not notice. But I looked up and I noticed it and I was like, wow, the moon looks really cool. And then I just went back inside and I kept going about my day. But I think it is a lot of just the noticing of little things. I was sitting at the kitchen table eating dinner the other night and I glanced over, there was a hummingbird that flew by. I was like, oh, a hummingbird. It's just little things. And so I think it can be kind of noticing those things around us that can, boost us up a little bit. Or like you're talking about, it's making the time too for the things that we already know we enjoy and prioritizing those things. I think this can look a lot of different ways of how to accumulate positive things.
I always go to the things that make me happy because that's always that I have most accessible. But I don't know. Some people find joy in tackling Sudoku. God, I don't understand.
I love Sudoku.
Fuck numbers. God.
I love Sudoku.
I guess I think that's a perfect example of something that would never, ever, 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 ever make my list. Might be on Michelle's, right? So, we pull out examples from, Michelle and mine's life because that's what we have immediate access to. But I really still think, you know what makes you happy, right? You know what you enjoy. So do it.
Yep. And to make an argument there, because for the most part, I really agree with you. And I can't tell you how many times I have, when I try to have this conversation with clients, of like, what's something small you can add into your day that would make you feel good. They literally look at me, and I think they're being pretty genuine, but I think they're like, I literally don't know. And I think especially if you grew up in a household where maybe there wasn't the time or the resources for you to just kind of play, to just be a kid or to just be a teenager, like whatever it was, if you were really brought up in a household where you kind of had to work to survive and you didn't get like this whole lot of free time to like actually find out what you like to do, this can be baffling for some people. But I think it really comes down to, again, noticing how you're experiencing the things in your day. Noticing if there are some things that you like better than other things, whether it's certain chores that maybe are easier for you than other things, or like, I think it's about starting really small and trying to have some trial and error with this to experiment and to play around and to see. Maybe you do decide to try Sudoku and maybe you realize, screw this. Like, I do not like this. I am like Kate. Sudoku's not my thing. Maybe that's what you realize. Okay. Great. That just gave you some information there of like, this isn't how I want to, this isn't going to be a pleasant event for me. This isn't going to be something I enjoy. So you may have to play around and be open to finding some things that clearly don't work in order to find the things that you actually will enjoy doing. So, I do agree with you for the most part, Kate, that I think everybody, if they do really look, has at least one or two things probably already that like they do know they like to do it. They just don't make the time for it. But there may be some people out there who, as we're talking about, like, find the things you like. They really may feel lost hearing that as well.
That is fair. I mean, I struggle often with like knowing what I want, especially in the context of other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if it's my desires and other people's desires, I have a very hard time knowing what mine are.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I want to do what you want to do, right? Because that has a lot to do with my childhood and stuff like that. So that does make sense. I wasn't really thinking about it from that context, but a lot of the times I think you hit it spot on with the idea of experimentation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. Now's your chance.
Yeah. Now really is your chance.
The podcast told me to try and find things I like.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. And even though I know I'm about to put like a big task in front of myself with our Facebook group. So DBT has a list of over 200 pleasant events, over 200, like a ton. And this is a thing that, I think we both like giving to clients, whether it's through our individual work with clients or in group. I love when people do this, of just go through the list and see what stands out to you. Some things you'll look at on that list, you'll be like, I hate that idea. And some you'll look and be like, ooh, that really excites me. But there's over 200.
I didn't realize the list was written in like the 90s or something.
Well, I think it's been updated. We did for a while use a really like outdated list that was like, what are some of these things on this list? We don't even really know. The list is a little better now than it used to be in the first DBT.
The old one.
The old one was horrible. It was really bad. Sorry, Marsha Linehan. But again, she updated it.
For then.
Yeah, it worked for then. Yeah, exactly. And so what I may do in the Facebook group, even though it'll take me some time, is I may type out the list and put it in there, or I'll try to find the handouts and just maybe take some pictures. I'll see what I decide to do. But I think it could be really helpful, especially if you're one of those people that, isn't quite sure, or maybe you liked something years and years and years ago, and then you try it now and you're like, well, this isn't the same, and you're looking to reboot or get some new ideas for what things you could do that you would enjoy. I'll figure out some way somehow to get that list up in the Facebook group, because I love the list, and I love that it's so long and that there's so many options on it. So yeah, cool. Awesome. So yeah, like Kate was talking about, it's really important to find things that you can do, ideally every day, whether it's intentional activities where you put everything else on pause and you devote time to that activity, like reading, or whether it's as you're going through your day, you're practicing some mindfulness and you just notice some smaller things that bring you a sense of happiness or fulfillment or whatever it is. So that's one way to look at the A for how to start accumulating positive emotions. And those are kind of more some short-term ideas. And then DBT also talks about doing this A of accumulating positive emotions from a wider lens, a bigger picture perspective of looking at what your values are and how you can start living out your values a little bit more. This is something I talk about, actually. I don't know about you, Kate. You can share what you think about this after I explain it. But this is something I talk about with clients a lot, because sometimes I feel like clients have the short-term stuff down, right? Mm-hmm. They know what movies they like, and they know what forms of like body movement they enjoy, like whatever. They have the short-term stuff, pretty much down to a science of like, I have lots of things I enjoy, but their long-term goals is where they're struggling, because maybe they're in a job they don't like, or they, live in a place they don't like, or whatever it is. They have these big things in their life that aren't working for them. And so I see that. And then sometimes I see the reverse, actually, where I'll see people who, big picture, their life is going pretty well. Like they're in a career they really like. They have a family that they're pretty happy with, all of that. But again, if you ask them, well, what do you do for you, for fun? That's where they struggle. So there's kind of two sides of this coin when it comes to accumulating positive emotions, and it's not uncommon, I think, to struggle with one or the other side of that. That's how I explain to my clients. I don't know if that comes up in your work with people too, but...
Well, it does, yeah. I think a lot about, I don't know, I also think people farm out the idea of what their life, here's my favorite word again, should look like. Whether that be what they should enjoy on the small term, like I was talking about, or what they should build their, big picture life to look like you're about to. And so I like to kind of redirect people a lot to, come back to you, right? And so I actually really like the handout that we're working off that talks about building a life worth living. And I think, you're the only one who gets to decide that. And that's a big task, right? That we're not trying to downplay how hard that is. I also want to say you're not stuck with whatever you first think of.
Yeah.
You get to change your mind based on your experiences or your own growth or change over time. But I do think that, there's this idea of looking at your own, as you're going to talk about, values, and kind of building from there into an extrapolated larger kind of life trajectory or plan that meshes with your desires and your goals and your values.
Yeah.
So, if that's not what, I don't know, what is it, what's the phrase where you're keeping up with your neighbor? What is that thing? With the Joneses? Is that the
Yeah. Keeping up with the Joneses. Yeah. Keeping up with your neighbor? I'm like, what is she talking about? Yes.
Maybe you don't want that. That's okay.
Yeah.
But do some self-exploration to find out what you do want.
Yeah. That's, I think, so important, what you just mentioned, of a lot of people do build their life around trying to make their lives look like other people's lives. And that's a recipe for unhappiness if I ever heard it. I mean, it may work for a little while, but long term, it may leave you with a lot of regrets. So feeling really dissatisfied, I agree. So what I'm about to talk about is basically how to get out of that rut. If you're looking ahead to the big picture of your life, and if you think about where your life may be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, important reminder, nobody knows what the future looks like. But people talk about that a lot, like having, quote unquote, a 5-year plan. And if you are like, I have no idea what I even want my life to look like in 5 years, this is for you. So that you can maybe start making some changes now that will make your life feel more worthwhile over the long term. So DBT walks us through 7 steps to do this. Again, none of these things are simple or easy to do, but DBT tries to break it down so that you can track with it a little bit. So step number 1, which I would argue is the hardest, it says, avoid avoiding. Start now to do what is needed to build the life you want. That's tough because maybe you've been at that dead-end job for 15 years and you're terrified to think about getting a new job. Maybe you've been in that unhappy relationship for a long time and think
inertia is real.
Yeah, maybe you've lived in the same place for years and you don't want to move, right? And yet you're not happy with where you're at. So it is really hard to face and actually decide to make a change. And Kate and I feel like we're broken records with saying this, but we say it a lot. Pick one. Start with one. If there's lots of areas of your life that are not working, pick one area to start with rather than trying to change everything at once. That can be way too much. So that's the first step. Avoid avoiding is what it says. The second step is to identify values that are important to you. I'm also going to post a values list. DBT talks about quite a few values. My reaction when I look at the list that DBT has is that, wow, those all sound great. But there really are some that stand out more than others. So like I said, I'll post it. I'm not going to necessarily go over all of them right now. But for example, one value that maybe doesn't stand out as much to me is be powerful and able to influence others. I don't really care so much about that. But another value that does ring a bell for me that feels really important is to recognize the universal good of all things. I really like that. So quite a few of them might stand out to you. There may be some that you're like, meh, I don't really like that. But try to pick, I would say maybe your top 3-ish of like, these are the things that if I was really leading the life that I want for myself, I would be living out these 3 things. These are my top 3. So I'll post that list for you guys to look at. And so pick the values that are important for you. And then it says, identify one value to work on right now. So what's something that maybe out of those 3 values is either your top one, or out of the 3, the one that you feel like you can at least get the ball rolling in some way?
Yeah,
the one that's most doable that you can start tackling now. Then this step is really important. It says, identify a few goals related to this value. Start identifying actions that you can do that would be part of this value. That's really important. And again, with this DBT list, the way they have it, they break down each of the values into a couple ideas of specific actions that you can start doing related to that value. But of course, you can come up with your own. You don't have to just follow what they're recommending, but coming up with something that you can do. So for example, if you pick
lots of other value worksheets online.
Oh my gosh.
Non-DBT related.
So many values assessments.
Walk out and find a list that starts to resonate for you, because there's lots.
Yeah, absolutely. Values can look so many different ways and be about so many different things. So I really like that you mentioned that, of just like, go find a values worksheet somewhere basically that will work for you and get you thinking. The example that DBT gives is if somebody picked the value of being productive, a goal that might go along with that is get a job where I can do something useful, or find a volunteer job that will use the skills I already have. So you want to get really specific with how you can start living out that value. Then once you have goals related to that value, then you pick one of those goals. So they're basically making it more and more specific.
More specific.
Yeah, like narrowing it down as we go along. So pick one of those action steps, and then there may be action steps within that. So it says identify small action steps toward your goal. So if you've decided that your value is to be productive, your goal is to get a job where you can do something useful, then you break that down even further to, okay, so what do I need to do to get that job? And they give some examples here, right? Submit applications, write a resume, visit places, or start looking online. So you're going to create even more concrete, specific, doable steps to reach that goal. And then you get to pick one of those action steps with where to start. Yeah, yep. So basically you start with identifying values, then you identify goals related to those values, then you break down those goals into smaller steps to get there. Yep, and then you pick one action step to begin with. So it really does. It takes this larger picture view of values, and it really does try to bring it back to the now. Ideally, if you do this work, if you really think about this, if you really write some of this down, if you were able to find an action step that you could take currently, that'd be amazing. And we understand the world is very different with COVID right now. So again, it might be kind of harder to pick.
It might be this is the thing I'm going to do the day I can.
Exactly, right? The day that I can, get out of my house again, is what I'm going to do.
Or something. A lot of things would come down to doing research, I feel like,
yeah.
The A component
yes.
of it, and at least information is still available.
That's right. Yeah, the internet is our friend, and it can help us with taking a lot of action steps, because probably one of those action steps, regardless of what your goal is, regardless of what your value is, one of the action steps will probably be to do research of some kind.
Yep.
And that's where the internet comes in. So that's what DBT is recommending of how to look at this big picture in your life so that you're accumulating positive emotions. We tend to feel better when we are living a life that overall makes us happier, so that even on really hard days, we have this big picture that grounds us and can make us feel good. So yeah, the A of ABC can be looked at short term or long term, either way, and ideally both. So
and even the long term funnels down to right now.
So, yeah, what can you do today? Yeah, in its own sneaky way, that is what it does. Yep.
So moving on to B.
Yeah.
Moving on to B. Okay. So B stands for Build Mastery. And one of the top things on the handout that talks about this is trying to build a sense of accomplishment. And I really like that kind of idea. Building mastery can sound kind of, I don't know, highfalutin. Right? Like, oh, I'm going to become a master at something. Like, well, you know, most of us aren't a technical master at much of anything. I remember there's like a certain, like, 10,000.
10,000, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Right? Like, no. So don't be necessarily, I mean, if you want to, more power to you. But, you know, it is, I think, really about that sense of accomplishment. We like feeling accomplished, right? It's a good feeling to be like, fuck yeah, I did that, right? Like, look, I've gotten better at this thing, or just the joy of engaging in something at which you are already good, right? Just utilizing skills that you have can help remind you of your own competence, can help remind you of your own value, can help remind you of your worth, right? Like, these are things at which I am, you know, already accomplished to some extent. I think, Michelle, earlier you were talking about people not knowing what they like. I think you and I have both witnessed how few people know what, you know, at what they're, you know, what they're good at doing, which is interesting, and I like to poke people about it. It makes people uncomfortable, and that makes me, my little compassionate sadist therapist, heart happy. Because I absolutely guarantee everyone listening to this is good at something. I don't know what it is, but I know you're good at it. Like, whatever it is. I think people sometimes think too big on this idea, right?
Yeah.
They like, what, I don't know, world-changing skills do I have, or what do I do that is so much better than how other people do it, or something, right? So, like, scale it down a bit, right? One of my favorite examples for myself is I make, like, fucking perfect grilled cheese sandwiches. I make amazingly good grilled cheese sandwiches, and I'm very proud of that. Am I changing the world with that? No. Nope. Not a bit. In fact, most of the people I know will never have a grilled cheese sandwich made by me, even.
I was going to say, next time, can we agree to this right now in real time over the podcast with everyone listening? Next time I come to your house for us to actually record in the same room together, will you please make me a grilled cheese sandwich?
I will
Yay!
absolutely make you a grilled cheese sandwich.
Okay, folks. She said she would.
No matter how thick the cheese is, and not burnt on the outside.
Okay, and then I will talk about how good it is on the podcast after I eat it.
That's your half of the deal. You have to confirm my skill.
Yes, I will give a review of how good the grilled cheese is. I'm excited now.
And that's the idea, right? You are good at doing something, right? I don't know what it is. This can be domestic skills. This can be like outdoor activity skills. This can be artistic skills. This can be, I don't know what it's like, technical, or, you know, like I don't know what the word
Like
is,
building
like
things?
Yeah, building skills. I was gonna think like stuff having to do with technology or like electronic
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
You could be really good at playing certain games, whether those be like, you know, board games or role-playing games or video games or computer games, right? Maybe you are an insanely fast reader and you're just really good at, you know, plowing through books. I don't know what the thing is, but you have it, right? And so I would challenge you as you're listening to this, or, you know, after the episode, think about this, right? Take some time, and even if it makes you uncomfortable, because also I think people are afraid to admit stuff they think they're good at doing, because it feels too much like bragging and pride, and we have a lot of baggage around those ideas, right? Even if it's just to yourself, have a little bragging moment, have a little pride, and notice what you're good at doing. And then, you know, like all of these 3 skills today, spend time doing it, right? This is going to help fill your tank, right? Fuck yeah, I did that. Pardon me. I feel like I'm swearing a lot more today. Just to put that out there. Maybe it's because I'm home. And
It's because you're excited, I think. It's like the enthusiastic swearing. It's not the angry swearing at all. It's like, I'm so fucking excited about this. It's that kind of swearing. You're all about it.
I feel like I've done it a lot today.
It's okay. Keep it up.
Right, so do these things because that, like, yeah, I did that. That feeling is so good for us. It's so nourishing, right? And we have a world that constantly both challenges and contradicts our own sense of confidence and competence. Like, there is so much happening to wear us down. We need to spend time and energy building ourselves back up again. So this, I think, is one really excellent way to help build yourself up. And it doesn't have to be world-changing. It doesn't have to be life-altering. It doesn't have to be something even most people would, know about.
Mm-hmm.
It just matters that you feel that hell yeah about it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned a little bit ago, and I think it's worth really emphasizing, is that it's not about being the best at something. Because I catch myself falling into that a lot in my own thinking, where I'll think about, oh yeah, well, I'm good at this. But then I'll think about, oh, but there's someone better than me at that. Like, I'll feel really good inside, but then the minute I'm around someone else and we're like doing it together, and through my own opinion, they do a better job than me, then I somehow in my brain think that, oh, never mind, I'm not good at that anymore. I think part of that comes from growing up as a ballet dancer. There's a lot of competition in the ballet world. A lot. You're side by side with these people in a studio every day, and you see what other people are good at. And it's really easy to think that because you didn't do like as many turns as the dancer next to you did, that somehow you're not good at turning anymore. When maybe you really are. You just had an off day or whatever. So I think that comparison piece is really important. It doesn't matter if someone else in the world can make an objectively better grilled cheese than Kate. Kate's grilled cheese is probably still pretty awesome, as I'm going to find out at some point in the future. So, like, I think it's really about, and you emphasize this pretty well, Kate, but like that inner knowing within yourself and having that, like, hell yeah, like, I did that. I feel good about it. And it does not matter what anybody else thinks, whether they think you're good at it or whatever it is, just to really have that inner confidence.
Better. Like, if you're not the best, you're not good. And I think that's a great thing to point out. Because only one person ever gets to be the best, like, in any moment, at anything on the planet. So chances are, I feel pretty damn certain I'm not the best in the world at anything I do. Other than, I guess, being myself. Because, I am the only one who gets to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not the best, but it doesn't mean I'm not.
It doesn't matter. Yep.
And I think we talked about this before starting, and I almost forgot. Depending on who you are, another way of building mastery can be focusing more on that building side of it. You can always start at something completely new, which means chances are you're closer to the sucky end of it to start with, because, novices are. But there's also a deep sense of gratification, I think, from improving in a thing. My personal experience with this has mostly come from baking. 3 years ago, I had never done anything but back-of-the-bag Toll House cookies. That's the only thing I'd ever baked in my whole life. And now I'm making, like, 7-layer entremets with mirror glazes. If you don't know what any of that means, that's probably because
it shows how good of a baker she is. That you can use terms that the layperson isn't going to know.
Exactly. But it's because I've become very passionate about it as a hobby. And so every time I can add a new skill or accomplish something that's considered objectively difficult in the baking world or things like that, that also gives me that hell yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but it didn't start at hell yeah. I made at least one cake that you could pick up out of the tin and hit the counter with, and it didn't break. Like, I don't even know. I don't know the science and alchemy that went into making that particular cake, but it was didn't just taste bad. It was actually physically inedible. It was that solid. So you're gonna fuck up and stuff when you start. But when you conquer a thing, when you challenge yourself and meet that challenge, that can be another way of kind of triggering that sense of self-gratification and self-accomplishment. So, both take time to do things you're already good at, and if you find it stimulating, if you find it enjoyable, tackle something new. That is another way of doing it.
Yep. And I think without bragging, because like we said, people feel really uncomfortable with talking about that, but what just came up for me is I had a, FaceTime call with my friend who's also named Michelle a couple days ago, and she's been planning a trip to Japan that unfortunately has now been postponed. She doesn't know when she's going to be going again. It might be a little bit like a couple years now down the line, but she's been using, I think it's the Duolingo app to learn Japanese. And she shared that with me. She's like, oh yeah, and I'm learning Japanese. I was like, tell me some stuff. And she felt super uncomfortable because she's still really new at it. She was like, I don't really know what to say. And I was like, just try it. Like, just tell me a word that you've learned. And then she shared one word with me. And the next thing I knew, she shared like 6 or 7 things that she'd learned with me. And I hope that it made her feel really good of like, look, like you are building mastery. Of course I didn't use that term necessarily, but I was like you're learning, like you're figuring it out, because that's exactly what she's doing. And a lot of times, again, we can feel very insecure as adults when we're back being a beginner with something. It feels outside of our comfort zone, and yet like find people in your life who are gonna like build you up and support you in this new thing that you're learning, whether it's like learning an instrument or a language or how to bake or whatever it is. Find supportive people in your life, not people who are gonna drag you down and what did you say, Kate? Sorry.
Oh, naysay.
Yeah.
Don't hang out with the naysayers. Hang out with the people who be like, oh, you did what? That's so cool.
Yeah, exactly. Find those people in your life for when you're going out on a new venture that's totally unknown, because we're all gonna probably suck at first, but we're all learning, and it feels really cool to grow and to figure out something new.
And I will say, I know, small portion of the population, but if you don't have any cheerleaders, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, I get it. And third of all, be your own, please.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. So, I say we move on to the C, the cup ahead of time. What was that?
I said, go Michelle.
Go me. Okay, here I go. Last one, wrapping it up with the ABCs. Admittedly, out of the 3, this is Kate and I's least favorite. And I think part of that is because we can't cope ahead sometimes with difficult situations that we encounter. Like I said, hello COVID. Nobody knew that this was going to happen. It's not like somebody at the beginning of 2019 said, hey, early 2020, this big pandemic's going to hit the world. No, sometimes things just happen. I think about when I think I mentioned it.
Earthquakes or other like natural disasters.
Yep. There's lots of science out there that can predict some of the time, but there's a lot of things that happen in life that we just don't know. I think about, I might have mentioned it before, but when I was in my car accident back in October, I think, of 2018. It was a while ago now. But, I didn't know that morning when I left the house that I was gonna rear end someone. I had no idea. Like, there's lots of things that happen that we don't see coming. And there are also sometimes situations in life where, not that any of us have a crystal ball or can perfectly predict the future, but sometimes we may see some things coming. There's like a foreseeable event that might be stressful for us, and that's where you can use this cope ahead skill. Because there may be things like when you have a job interview lined up and you may be stressing about the job interview. Or the most common example that I think of with this is family stuff.
Yep, holidays, reunions, birthdays, whatever. Yep,
you have some things maybe on your calendar and you may find yourself really worrying about how is this gonna go. And that's where using this skill can maybe help with calming some of those worries. And I think, again, if we think about that gas tank, we were talking about at the very beginning, worrying drains our gas tank. And hopefully if you can use this skill of cope ahead, it will lead to less worries, slow it down a little bit so that your gas tank isn't getting drained as rapidly. Maybe you could put a pause on how quickly your gas tank is going down. So basically, the way to break it down is, first you have to know what the situation is, like I just described. Have an idea of what the stressful event is that you're a little bit worried about. Yeah. And I kind of almost think of this like it's, and I swear, use the term regularly that's not correct. I say guided visualization, but that's not what I mean. What's the term that I'm thinking of?
I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't know.
The way that I always explain it is like that thing, which is a pretty well-known concept now of like, if you're a basketball player, imagine yourself playing the perfect basketball game.
I think they're more like race car drivers. They like sit down in a pretend car and go through the pretend race in their head.
It's exactly that, except probably not with race car driving since, we don't, most of us don't do that.
In which case, cool.
Yeah, that's awesome if you're a race car driver.
You already have some good skills in place to do this.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, Kate. Like it is. It's that thing of like, we imagine ourselves doing the thing and we imagine ourselves doing it in a way where it goes well. And there's been
like a skillful manner.
Yeah, being very skillful in how you want to imagine this thing going. And there's been tons of research, which is why it bugs me that I can't think of the term for it. There's tons of research that this actually works. Race car drivers do better. Athletes have a better game. Whatever it is, this actually can work for improving outcomes, which is, kind of really cool, I think. And bananas. It's wild that we can imagine something in our brain, and that's such a powerful tool that it can then help it actually go better when the thing happens. So it's not a perfect magical fix, but that's what we're talking about here. Because after you know what the situation is, the next thing that you want to do is to imagine yourself acting skillfully, as DBT puts it, in the situation. I think this is really key, especially if you're, so like with the race car example, you're imagining yourself in that race car doing the thing. And what's going to work out best is if you're not thinking about what the other drivers are doing. Just think about yourself. And when it comes to family stuff, if that's what you want to use this for, which is where we most commonly recommend it, don't think about, I want my grandma, who never, ever, ever gives me a hug when I walk in the room. I'm going to imagine her giving me a hug. No. That's probably not how it's going to go down. But what you can do is imagine that when she does not give you that hug, how do you want to be responding differently? Like, imagine the situation as factually as possible, warts and all. But imagine yourself handling it differently than maybe you have in the past so that you feel better in the situation. Even if the situation is still kind of shitty, imagine yourself being in the situation in a skillful way. And so DBT recommends imagining it really vividly and to rehearse it in your mind. Rehearse it regularly. The more you do it, the better. What'd you say?
So we're going to get a chance to practice.
Yes, this is going to be a little bit of what the closing moment is. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, and it gives a couple different ways of what you can rehearse. So it says, rehearse in your mind exactly what you can do to cope effectively. Rehearse your actions, your thoughts, what you say, and how to say it. Rehearse coping effectively with new problems that come up, and rehearse coping effectively with your most feared catastrophe. That last one, I really like. Because if you imagine things going the worst they could possibly go, imagine yourself still being able to come out of that situation feeling okay about how you handled it, even if it went really, really, really horrible. And then this last thing is also really, really important. It says practice relaxation after rehearsing, because this can be stressful. Like we said, we're not imagining the situation going with sunshine and rainbows. We're imagining the situation going realistically, which may be really difficult, and you just behaving in a way that you feel good about in that situation that might be chaotic and, again, hard to be in. So it may bring up some stress for you doing this, and then it's important that you do something relaxing afterwards, whether that is like some meditation, if that's your jam, or, reading a book, if that's your thing.
Listening to music, whatever.
Yeah, anything that's calming. Some of the pleasant event stuff we talked about earlier with the short-term things. Go to one of those activities so that it can help transition you out of doing this, because this can have big benefits and payoff in the long run. But in the short term, this may feel a little emotionally tiring. This takes some work to sit and imagine this. And it may feel a little unpleasant, so do something after to really take care of yourself is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
cool. So for homework, Kay and I were thinking about what do we want to do for, homework this week out of the A, B, and the C, especially given that the world is pretty restricted right now with COVID-19. So what out of these felt good for us to pick as like, hey, hone in on this one? Because it's a lot of information. Like we said, these are all kind of standalone things already because they're so big. So we thought that the most important one out of these three that we recommend is to do the build mastery. That was the one that we liked for what we're dealing with currently in the world, is because there is so much going on that's outside of our control, that's unpredictable, and that can bring up a lot of anxiety for people. So again, the long-term thinking with the accumulating positive emotions like I was talking about, like we said, if there's something you can do now, awesome, do it. And we also know that one currently might feel a little overwhelming to start thinking about making big life changes when life has already changed quite a bit over the past couple months. We don't know
when or how it's going to return to normal.
Yeah, so that one might be one to put on hold, but the build mastery, see what you can do to start doing something that you can control that you feel good about now. That, again, can make you feel good if you're feeling really down about all of this. I had one of those days yesterday. I just felt down about everything with COVID. Like, I got some bad news that something I was really looking forward to is getting canceled, and I just felt down. And yet, I can already see how, like, doing podcasting together, I feel like that's one of my build mastery things. Like, how doing this together today is already bringing me back up a little bit of like, oh, I'm doing something that I feel good when I'm doing it. And now I feel a little more centered, a little better about myself. And so that's what we recommend, picking a build mastery thing for you to do.
Am I wrong, or did we forget to say something about the email last time?
We totally did. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, we did in our sleep episode. We totally forgot that. So, yeah, make sure to email us, dbtmepodcast@gmail.com. We really want to do another Q&A episode in the near future. That's something that we want. Yeah, we really like doing those. So, send us stuff. We need stuff in order to make those episodes happen. So send us questions, send us comments, send us things you're struggling with or successes. We'll share all of it. So
yeah, that's true. It doesn't just have to be questions or hardships. It can also be ways you utilize the skills and positive experiences you had using this stuff. So we like hearing from you.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So dbtmepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for catching that, Kate, because I did. Totally forgot to mention it last episode.
Throw something that makes a big platter. Good job.
Okay. I think we're ready for closing moment time.
Nice. Okay. So, as with every time, if you're capable and safely able to do so, I encourage you to find a comfortable place to sit or lay down. And if you're comfortable and able to do so, I invite you to close your eyes. As always, we're going to start by just tuning into our breath. Noticing where we feel our breath the most. Noticing the rhythm of our breath, the temperature of the air. No right or wrong way to be breathing. And it's just about paying attention. Just about tuning in. And just about letting our breath welcome us into our bodies and into the moment. Now, I'd like you, please, to bring to mind a situation. Something that either happens regularly in your life or a single event that you know is coming up sometime in the future that you feel stressed about. Something where you feel anxious or scared Maybe a situation in which you think you might get really angry, or where you're worried you might behave in a way that is unskillful or unpleasant or might embarrass you. Just some situation that could plausibly go down in a difficult manner, and or one you think you might not handle as well as you'd like to. So just take a moment and bring that situation to mind. Allow the feelings that you tend to feel in that situation or anticipate feeling in that situation. Let those feelings really come to be in your body right now. Make space for them to show up. And now I'd like you to begin to walk through a daydream, if you will, of that situation. One where you imagine all the other players, all the other actors in this situation behaving your best guess of how you think they're likely to behave. If someone is likely to do something that hurts you, or makes you angry, or frustrated, or anxious, allow that to play out in your mind's eye right now. However, as you're imagining that, take the time to imagine yourself behaving skillfully. Imagine yourself handling the situation either better than you have in the past, or better than you're afraid you might. This is your imagination, and in this daydream, you are capable of anything. So really allow yourself to feel filled with that strength. Allow yourself to feel that sense of possibility and of ability to regulate your emotions, to be really intentional with your reactions and your behaviors. Just imagine yourself navigating this difficult situation in a way where when it's done, you feel accomplished, you feel proud, you feel as emotionally stable as you can on the other side of it. Let yourself imagine the coping skills that you'd like to utilize if this situation is really hard. Allow yourself to imagine how your actions might go, what thoughts you might have, what you might say or do, and make those ways of thinking and doing, make them be the way that you've always wanted. Remember, we can't control anyone else as we go into these difficult situations. We can only influence ourselves. So take this time and start that process. Start influencing yourself through imagining yourself. Doing this skillfully, doing this calmly, and doing this with the best ability you have to cope. Understandably, this situation might be something that would play out longer than we have during this closing moment. So, if necessary, I invite you to continue this after we wrap up today. However, if you are feeling ready to exit that daydream right now, I invite you to let it go. Let the images fade, let any other senses, smells, sights, sounds fade away. And take the moment to come back into your breath. Take a moment to ground yourself back into your body, into the moment as it is now, not into the imagined future. You might also use this time to roll your ankles or wrists, your neck or shoulders, other things to help ground you out of the daydream and back into the now. And also, if that was particularly stressful after this podcast, go and do something nice. Take a few more minutes to breathe. Do something calming and relaxing. For now, thank you so much, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. See you next week. To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group.